Hey, this is Evan Longoria of your San Francisco Giants, and you're listening to TortureCast.
You're listening to a podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. With hosts Willie Dills, Chad King, Ben Lee, and Eric Nathanson. Dedicated to the greatest team in Major League Baseball, the San Francisco Giants. This is TortureCast.
It's Thursday, August 9th, 2018, and this is episode 149 of the TortureCast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. I'm your host, Chad King, and joining me from very hot Georgia is Eric Nathanson. What's up, man?
Not much. If people hear the buzzing in the background, it is not a swarm of bees that is descending upon me. It's so hot, I have to add fans on top of the air conditioner, so please bear with me.
Yeah, you know it's hot when you got to add a fan on top of the air conditioner. You got to blow the medium warm air, the lukewarm air around you, just to provide some evaporative cooling effect, right?
That's exactly what it's doing. And we've been schlepping fans all over the house for days. The wife just came home with another fan, and they're just strategically placed through the house at this point. We got another month and a half of this, so you know, I've always known it's what I'm in for in the South. So at least, you know what? And my thoughts go out to the California area with the fires and everything like that. You know, I'd much rather have what I'm going through than what California's going through with the fires. So, you know, it's frustrating to see what's going on out there, and you know, hopefully it isn't affecting too many of our listeners.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm coming back from Hawaii where it was nothing but clear air out there. I kind of saw a couple clips on the news about the fires in California, and obviously they started before we left. I wasn't really too in tune with what was going on until the flight back, but man, driving into Gilroy yesterday in the whole Bay Area, it's just full of smoke. Everything's been drifting south from the Central Valley and Northern California into our area, and so it just looks bad out there. It's just, I can't even see the local mountains and hills around me, so it's tangible down here. You smell it down here, and I really do feel for all the people up north. It's now the largest fire in state history, which is crazy because just last year we set a record for the largest fire then.
That's what I thought too.
It's just insane what's been going on in the last few years with the arid conditions that are now becoming more consistent and everything. But yeah, just a prayer out for anyone who's affected by the fires. Hopefully you're okay, and you know, and your loved ones are okay up north. So our prayers go out to you guys. At the same time, I think we need to send some prayers the Giants' way. There's no literal fire, but it certainly seems like there's a little bit of a fire going on right now. The Giants just can't seem to light a fire under their own asses, to be honest. And they are really getting to the point now, Eric, and we'll get into it later, but they're at a point now where they're pretty much done. They need to reel off a really unprecedented streak here to really have a good playoff shot. We talked about this 2 weeks ago when their playoff chances were dwindling, and we said they need to rip off something pretty good here, like a 20-10 streak, a 25-12 streak, something like that, because they don't have many games left, and they got a lot of teams to leapfrog. So they can't just do better than Arizona. They can't just do better than LA. They can't just do better than Colorado. They have to do better than all three teams combined. And one of those three teams, if not two, is going to play over 500. Let's be honest. And being 3, 4, 5, 6 games behind these guys, they have to play out of their minds to even have a shot at the West. And let's just forget about the wild card because they're a half game further back in that slot, and they got way more teams to leapfrog. So I think that's just, they don't want it anyway, but that's just not going to happen. So they just don't seem to be doing it, man. It's been 2 weeks since recorded. They've gone 5-7 in that time. They're now 6.5 back of Arizona in fourth place. 2 games worse than they were when we last recorded. 7 games back for the final wild card spot, and they're a game under 500. This is definitely not a playoff team the way they're playing right now, nor the whole season. And unless they pull off that historic streak, it looks like they might be into settling mode here in the next couple of weeks. I know that the players and management and Bochy would never, ever, ever admit that, but I got to think that it's starting to creep into their minds. What do you think?
Yeah, they've been saying all the right things the last couple of weeks. We just need to get on a hot streak. We just need to play more consistently. But the days are running out. I mean, they've played 115 games now, so we're under 50 left in the season. There's not many streaks left to be had. This season, they haven't put together a longer winning streak of 5, but they haven't had a longer losing streak than 6. And they have hovered around 500 literally the entire season. The most games they were over 500 was 5 on July 1st. The most games that were under 500 was 5 on May 29th. So it's like they're an average baseball team. They're just not in the contention, and being behind 3 teams in the division and 5 teams in the wild card race, I guess 6 if you include the final, the second wild card spot. It seems insurmountable at this point. I really feel like that Brewers series that played right after we recorded, where they lost 3 straight to open up that Brewers series, I really felt like that was the series where, okay, it's not going to happen this season. Like I even posted it, rest in peace 2018 Giants, because
I saw that, yeah.
It was during that series, because that was a chance for them, okay, they don't play as well on the road, they play well at home, and then they came home and lost 3 straight to a team that is contending. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Brewers are a decent team, but the pitching is not as good as the Giants make it. Like, the Brewers pitching is not as good as the Giants make it. And that trend just continued straight on through. In games, they went and they won 2 games in San Diego, and they took 2 of 4 in Arizona for their first winning road trip in 13 months, which is a stat I'd been harping on this podcast for like 3 months now.
Yeah.
And it's nice that they went 4-2, and yippee, they had a winning road trip. But the 2 games they lost to Arizona, they gave up 5 runs in the first inning in each of those games. And they just aren't playing like a team that is ever going to grab it by the throat and run with it. No. And I was looking at the stats since we last recorded. You said they went 5-7. They've only averaged 3.5 runs per game during that time. They have struck out more than they have hits. They're averaging, leaving on base, 7.5 runners a game. They're just not doing the little things. The Giants always do the little things. And when your margin for error is as slim as theirs seems to be, you need to get those hits. There was plenty of examples. Just this past Tuesday, when they blew the game against Houston, there was Alan Hansen led off, I believe it was the top of the 8th, the bottom of the 7th inning with a triple. And then Bochy ended up sending up Pence as a pinch hitter for Bumgarner and pulling him, but he got stranded at third base. And I feel like we see it more often than not that the Giants get guys in scoring positions, and then nobody is getting the clutch hits behind them. And if you're not getting the clutch hits, you're not going to win games, and you're going to regress to the mean, which is exactly what they've done.
Yeah, twice in the Milwaukee series, including one time during the game they won, the last game. They had bases loaded and nobody out and didn't score.
Right.
That's hard to do. It really is. I don't have the stats in front of me, but you score something like 87% of the time with bases loaded. It's something that's hard. You have to try hard to not score 1 run when you have that situation. And the Giants have been doing it more often than not, certainly more often than the mean would suggest. And it's just killing them right now. Because, again, they were crushed a couple of those games, and same with the Arizona. The Houston series, though, look, it's hard to win 2 games in a row, 1-0, okay?
Yeah.
So let's just put that out first. So I know a lot of Giants fans are kind of butthurt about losing both games in heartbreaking fashion, but it wasn't like they lost both games, 5-4 or 8-7 or something like that. They lost both games with 1 run. Yeah, they should have won one of those 2. I'll be honest with you. Clearly, they should have won the first game for sure, just because it was Will Smith in the 9th, and he gave up a 3-run jack with 2 outs, and that was the first home run he's given up since last year. It's his first home run this year, so he's been money. His ERA is still under 2. I didn't see, to be honest, because I was in Hawaii, I wasn't on social media so much, so I didn't see the immediate reaction. What was kind of the tenor if you were on? Yeah, you said you were on. You were watching both games and had a string of curse words there when that happened. What was the reaction on social media? Did you have a lot of the Giants trolls kind of going out there going, Will Smith sucks and he shouldn't be our closer? I mean, did you have that? Was that going on there?
No, it was actually kind of impressive.
Good. No, that's
it really
good.
was. Yeah. I mean, everybody seemed to agree, and it's the way I feel. Will Smith just picked the wrong time to have a bad day.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, both runners that got knocked in on that homer were on base because of walks. So he obviously didn't have it that day. And you kind of got to just shrug your shoulders at that point and be like, and it seemed like that was the tenor. Was, you know, what can you do? Will Smith has been money all season long, you know, and he talked about it post game. Nobody feels as bad as he does. But like you said, if you score more than one run, that doesn't come into play. But Charlie Morton pitched a hell of a game on Monday for the Astros, and so it wasn't easy for the Giants to squeeze across the one run. I mean, their only run came on a Brandon Crawford solo shot that barely got into the arcade. So it wasn't like the Giants were, you know, knocking down the door. Like you said, it wasn't like an 8-7 type game. You know, their margin for error was razor thin. And as we've generally seen this season, when the Giants have a razor thin margin for error, they don't come through. Generally, people were okay. You know, it sucked. I was making jokes because, I mean, what can you do? You know, Will Smith did not get jiggy with it that night. You know, there's just nothing you can do about it. The guy has been lights out. He's been their best bullpen piece all season long since he came back from the Tommy John surgery. I found that there was more consternation after Tuesday's game when Ray Black was the one who gave up the 2-run. And again, to me, that was kind of odd because Black had just gotten through a streak where he had pitched like 10 1/3, 10 2/3 of no hit ball. The first hit that he gave up that inning was the first hit he gave up since his debut. So it's not like, you know, the Giants were throwing out. It's not like Sam Dyson got torched. It's not like
Corey
Derek
Guerin
Law.
or
Yeah, right,
Derek Law
exactly.
or
You know, it's not like those guys got torched. The Giants got beat with their best, and they got beat by the reigning world champions. And it just goes to show you need more than one run to beat the reigning world champions. They got all their runs on 2 swings of the bat. But so did the Giants. Problem is the Giants didn't have any other runners on.
They didn't have anyone on. Yeah.
You know, and I don't know how well Keuchel pitched on Tuesday because I missed half the game. I was taking a nap, and I woke up and I watched Ray Black, and people were pissed. And my thought was Black kept pumping fastballs in there to, I don't remember the guy's name who hit it, White or something like that.
Yeah.
Tyler White, I think.
I can't remember his name. Yeah.
I remember Marwin was the one on Monday, but I don't know who this guy was. And, you know, the basic question was, how come he kept going to the fastball? And Bochy's reaction in the dugout seemed to say the same thing. And Black had come out and said that he started turning it up because he stopped shaking off Hundley and Posey. And Hundley was behind the plate Tuesday, and he kept throwing down the one. And I get it. The guy looked foolish on a couple of fastballs. But, you know, maybe pitch selection could have been better in that one scenario. But again, Ray Black has been so good that it's hard to completely fault him for the collapse. It all goes back to the offense. And so I was proud of Giants fans for not going crazy about Will Smith giving it up.
Good.
I understand that there was some frustration because it was the second day in a row that it happened on Tuesday. I mean, I just, like, Monday night when Will Smith gave up the homer, I did. I let out a long string of expletives. I walked out of the room. I might have broken a mug. But Tuesday it was just kind of like, figures.
Well,
you know,
it's one thing when it's Will Smith. He hasn't given up a home run all year. He's been solid, and it was a couple of walks which really did hurt him because it would have been a tie game if, you know, there weren't anyone on. But it's the fact that it was 2 outs, right? I mean, that's where it hurts so much. They hadn't scored a run in 26 outs, and they needed that one extra out. That's all they needed, one extra out to get a 3-run bomb. And then the next game, it hurt, but not as much in the sense of it was the 8th inning. It wasn't the last at-bat and all that stuff. And the Giants, again, only scored 1 run. So you can't keep faulting the pitching for this because they gave up 3 runs the first game and 2 runs the second game. 5 runs, 2.5 runs against one of the top offenses in all of baseball. That's not bad. That's a really good pitching performance overall. That's a fantastic pitching performance. The fact, the problem is that they scored 1 run in each game. So, again, they should have won one of those 2, no doubt. They should have split with the Astros, but unfortunately the Giants blew both saves in both games, and now they lead the major leagues with 26 blown saves. Now, everyone, mind you, that this statistic doesn't mean it's a loss, right? In fact, there's twice this year the Giants have blown 2 saves in a game. They've done that twice. They've won, I'd say, about half of those games. I don't have the number right in front of me. So they haven't lost every one of those games. But they do lead the league, and they only led the league twice in previous years. I think it was 2014 or 2016. Of course, they did make the playoffs, and then like 2005 or something like that. And it was in the 30s. I think one year was 28, and another year was like 32 or 35. Point being, they're very close to those numbers right now. The next closest team is at like 21 or 22. So it's not necessarily, McCovey Chronicles, we'll put a link in the show notes, kind of did a really good analysis of it. And it's not just the bullpen itself. I mean, actually, the bullpen, with a lot of the statistics, has been pretty solid this year, certainly better than last year and the year before. It really, you got to point to the offense, because the more games that you put yourself in where you have a one-run lead in the last 3 innings of the game, the more chances you're going to have to blow those saves. Here's another way to look at it. If the Giants had scored 3 runs, 4 runs, 5 runs in those games, it wouldn't be a safe situation in which they'd hit those bombs. And, of course, they wouldn't be blown saves. Even if it was a 3-run lead and a 2-run home run is hit, it's not a blown save. It's the fact that they play these really, really tight games in the ones that they're leading. The ones that they're losing, whatever. Sometimes they're tight, sometimes they're not. They're just playing really, really tight games right now because their margin for error, like you said, is so slim. And that margin, when it happens more often than not, gives you more opportunity to blow it. And that's kind of the microcosm of the Giants this season. And I was saying pre-show to Eric, they're hovering around 500. You pointed out they haven't been up or down by more than 5 or 6 games all year. They are a very mediocre 500 team. They just can't seem to punch through. If you took away just one game each month in which they should have won, and you could easily point to multiple games every month, by the way. If you just took one game every month that should have been a win, they would be 1.5 games out of first place right now. And that's what's really hard to fathom, is the fact that you just look back at the history and go, just one game a month, not one game a week or not 3 games in a row, one game a month in which they should not have blown. They would be right in this race, and they're not. And this is the difference between a playoff-bound team and a team that's going to go golf in the winter.
It's funny because the Giants aren't bad when they play their division. They're 29-26 against the West. But some of those hard losses came against, like, Miami. And I don't know if this – like 3 of them came against Miami. It just sticks out so much in my mind.
Yeah, Miami, that was a tough one, yeah.
You know, they're 20-20 in one-run games. And it's tough to keep a winning pace if you're just going to stay – it's just the microcosm of mediocrity that is this Giants team. You know, you can look at anything. They can't win on the road. We mentioned their first winning road trip in 13 months. Well, I mean, that's going to hamstring you if you keep going 3-3, 3-4 on the road. And they are a mediocre team, and I am totally okay with the fact that they didn't either buy or sell at the trade deadline for this reason. There was no giant chip that was going to come in and change the way they went about doing their business. The Giants have a pretty good pitching staff with Rodriguez, Bumgarner, Suarez. Even Holland has stepped up and done well. You know, they have a pretty good front end, and their bullpen, as you said, has been really good. But with the offense doesn't get it going, it doesn't matter. It just absolutely does not matter. And I don't have the stat. I wish I could find it of how many times they've loaded the bases and not scored this season, or how many times they've had runners in scoring position less than 2 outs and not scored this season. It's got to be a ton. And it's frustrating to watch every single day. And until they get guys that seem to come through, and these are the games they used to win. You know, they used to get, Joe Panic would get a base hit where now he's hitting right into the shift. And part of it is, I'll be honest, is missing Brandon Belt.
Yeah.
That's again, I mean, a guy whose stats are up there with some of the league's best stats. He's still, I believe.
Yeah, when he's playing.
Yeah, he's still, I believe he leads first baseman in all of baseball in win runs created, which is amazing to me because the guy's been on the shelf for like a full month this season. Mm-hmm. So when you're missing stuff like that, they're not a full and complete team. Where is it? There it is. They're not a full and complete team. And I mean, like, look at this. Belt has played 85 games. He's missed 30 games, a full and entire month.
Yeah.
So you got to think, just like you pointed to, if they win one game here or one game there, it's a little different. If you put Belt in the lineup, they're going to win one game here and one game there. That's what the Giants are. And it's kind of, I don't want to say they're in sell mode, but they're at a point where they're in rebuild mode, and we're going to start seeing more of the young kids come up and get some playing time this year.
So I have a question for you, because I did miss Tuesday's game. What was the reaction to Bochy pulling Bumgarner out after 7 shutout innings? I know hindsight and armchair quarterbacking dictates, he put in Ray Black and he gave up the 2-run home run the very next inning. Bumgarner would have shut him out. Okay, no, we don't know that. But he was at 100 pitches, and this is a guy, when he's fully healthy, easily goes 120. So was there any reaction to that? I didn't see the post-game interviews. Was there any questions to Bumgarner or Bochy about pulling him a little too early, perhaps?
Yeah, and I think first of all, from a fan point of view, nobody reacted until Ray Black gave up the homer. So nobody thought twice about it.
There's the armchair quarterbacking, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Nobody thought twice about it until then. Cueto was on KMBR. I think it was yesterday, and said it was embarrassing that Madison Bumgarner is getting yanked after 100 pitches. That wouldn't happen in his day, and blah blah blah, old man stuff. But
old man stuff.
Like, I even saw, I don't know, there was some radio host that it's a garbage to me. It was the right move at the time, because, like I said, Alan Hansen was on third base with 1 out, so he sent Pence up there to pinch hit for Bumgarner. And regardless,
thank you for picking. I know you said that earlier. I didn't realize that was the situation, because, again, I apologize to our listeners. I was out in Hawaii. I just couldn't watch games. I was sipping Mai Tais and stuff. So these are the little nuances that I miss that I usually I'm fully caught up upon. If he's on for third base with 1 out and they got a 1-0 lead and it's the bottom of the 7th, I'd make the same move.
Yes, absolutely. And it had nothing to do with pitch count or anything like that. We all know that the third time through the order for starting pitchers is the toughest. And Bumgarner, he pitched well. It wasn't a gem. I mean, it was good pitching, and he had an absolute lid on home plate. He made a great play 2 innings before. A ball got away from Hundley, and there was a runner on third. Reddick tried to score. Bumgarner covered the plate and received the throw from Hundley and tagged out Reddick and pretty much tackled him to prevent the run from happening. So there were times that the Astros were threatening in the game, and I believe Bum gave up like 6 or 7 hits. So it wasn't like he was completely mowing them down. So in the context of the gameplay and in the flow of the game, it seemed like the right move. It absolutely worked out the way it should. Moronta had been used on Monday night. Every day Ray is Moronta. So why not go to Ray Black, who has also been lights out since he came? I'm sure Bochy was not sweating it as much until, base hit here and then the home run. But it was not in the flow of the game. It seemed to make absolute sense. And I understand that Bum's a workhorse. But, I mean, the guy only has 11 complete games in his entire career. It's not like the old days. The managers are more apt to pull their pitcher if, especially Bum was about to hit 4th time through the order. So why not throw out the guy who throws 101 miles an hour to try to bridge the gap? And I'm sure Will Smith would have come out for the 9th inning if they still had that 1-0 lead. And then say he blows it. Then the hindsight's going to be the same crap that we're hearing anyways. So in context, it all made sense. It really did. Do I think down the road that Bochy might think twice now about pulling Bumgarner in a similar situation? Yeah, but that's because it's turning into a lost season. When you're still trying for the pennant and you're still trying to keep your horses intact, you don't want to tax them and lose the game and necessarily possibly hurt your player.
I saw that. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say 100 pitches seems to be that mark nowadays. And, yeah, Bum could be different, but let's be honest. The guy has not played a full season. He, may not still be fully healthy. What are you going to say?
Everybody who, I guess you're right. I mean, everybody wasn't too hard on Twitter for the previous night with Will Smith. But as far as Bumgarner, I did see that headline on KNBR with Cueto saying that statement about it was, idiocracy or it was ludicrous or it was embarrassing or whatever to pull him after 100 pitches. But the context that you just presented to me makes perfect sense. And additionally, obviously, Bochy is a very strategic manager. He's a Hall of Famer. We know all of the right moves he's made in the playoffs. He just seems to have the golden touch. I mean, this is the guy who put in Madison Bumgarner on 2 days rest to pitch the last 5 innings of Game 7 of the World Series. We know he trusts his guys. This is not the issue. And you just kind of painted it perfectly there. It's like, if this is the playoffs, yeah, Bumgarner's probably going another inning because he trusts his horse. This is the regular season, guys. And they had a runner on third with 1 out. And so they had an opportunity to knock him in. They had 2 chances to knock him in to double that lead. So to me, 7 innings, 100 pitches, that's fine. That's a good, serviceable, more than serviceable. That's an excellent performance by Madison Bumgarner. So, like you said, if he squeezes out another inning, well, they still have the 9th to go. He's probably not pitching the 9th, right? Unless he got, 3 ground balls in a row in the 8th or something like that. So he's not going to pitch the 9th, and then you're right back in the situation of, like, where do you put in, Ray Black because Will Smith just blew the save the night before? Do you go with Tony Watson, who ended up pitching the 9th, but that was mop-up duty? What do you do in that situation? And sometimes a manager is really handcuffed because you went for the offensive opportunity and it didn't work out. He puts in Ray Black, who hasn't allowed a run in God knows how long, and he happens to give up a home run there. So, I mean, shit happens. It sucks. It's just, this is the microcosm of the Giants season, really, the whole Giants team since the second half of 2016. It has been a full 2 years now of 2+ years of this team just underperforming of where they are. And it's indicative of where they're heading. And I think you listed it here. The Giants are currently rebuilding before our eyes. And I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think, again, we touched upon this, the Giants staff and management and players won't say it's rebuilding. They're going to say we're in the hunt. We're going for it, whatever. But they didn't make a move at the deadline. They didn't sell. They didn't buy. They're rebuilding, man. They're rebuilding. And they got guys like you point out here, Duggar and Slater, D-Rod, Suarez, and others. Some of them have been just performing admirably. Some of them way above expectations. I think this is where they need to head. I'm not saying they're out of the race yet. Technically, they still have a chance. But in the next week or two, they got to make a decision here. And it's whether to just play the rookies or to just trying to keep putting in the old men, for that old veteran try. But at this point, I think you got to start laying off the veterans and just seeing what the new guys can do.
I mean, I'll say it. The season's over. But those are the guys. You look, Austin Slater is hitting 304. Steven Duggar, yeah, he's hitting 247, and he finally hit his first home run. But the guy's got 6 doubles out of his 20 hits, 6 doubles in 89 plate appearances, 81 at bats, so at least he has a few walks. And he is the best defensive center fielder that the Giants have had out there since maybe, somebody tried to make a Darren Lewis comparison the other day, and while I get his thought process is in the right place, I think Duggar is even better than that. He is the best center fielder I have seen at AT&T Park on the Giants roster, period. He gets an amazing jump to the ball. His closing speed is phenomenal. He reads the ball off the bat. It's like he's floating out there with wings sometimes. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, Duggar is not going anywhere. He is the center fielder for the rest of the year, and he will be the starting center fielder next year. It's guys like bringing up Shaw to maybe stick him to left field or right field to see what he can do, maybe giving Mack another chance. Slater's been playing a lot of first base because Belt went down, but when Belt comes back, Slater could probably play a little bit of left field. I know Gorky's has done well, and he's had a decent year. He's batting .261. He's got his 13 home runs. Still blows my mind.
I know, right?
If you look at the Giants roster, Andrew McCutchen at this point is the one tradable commodity. I understand that Derek Holland is a possibility as well to get through waivers, but it looks like Kutch is the one Kutch has an option after this year. So he's basically a free agent after this year. If the Giants were to exercise that option, they'd be paying him somewhere like 15 or 16 million for next year. They're not going to do that.
They're not going to do that. No.
As hot as he's been lately, a 5-for-5 game in Arizona. That means he's had 2 5-hit games. Right. He's had 2 5-hit games this season. On Sunday when they won, McCutchen and Duggar accounted for all. Oh no, not Sunday. The Friday game or whatever. one of the games that they won in Arizona, he and Duggar accounted for all of the runs. Like Kutch hit a homer, Duggar drove him in one time, Duggar hit a homer, and that was it. But, Kutch is basically a commodity at this point. He's not going to come back. They're not going to pay a 32-year-old outfielder a multi-year deal. They've learned their lesson. They've been burned. I mean, you got Hunter Pence, who's 35 years old now. So he's kind of the example of what not to do with the long-term contract, even though I will personally admit the first 3 years of that contract, he was fine.
Oh, yeah,
it's just it's the getting older. So I think that's where their moves are to be made. That's why I believe Kutch is totally a tradable commodity. And a team like, I can't believe it, but a team like the Pirates might come in and pick him up.
I was thinking about that. I know it's really weird when you think about that because Kutch, he does have that option. The Giants are not going to pay him next year. They do need a rebuild. They're over the luxury threshold if they do what needs to be done over the next year. They're not going to re-sign him. So yeah, he's probably the only real trade bait. We're talking about Madison Bumgarner, though. I know a lot of people have thrown his name out as trade bait, as just, hey, let's just put all our cards on the table, man. Let's just think about it. I mean, I know it seems sacrilege, but let's just talk about it. That's a hard one, I got to admit, because when you kind of disassociate yourself with the feelings for the game, the nostalgia, the history, the way the Giants have treated their players in the past, which is to, like, the Tim Lincecum and Hunter Pence and Barry Zito. Well, no, Barry Zito was from the beginning. But other guys like that, where they re-sign them to these ridiculously long contracts that end up fizzling out because of what they did in the past. Madison Bumgarner certainly is right in that alleyway. But that said, he is in the prime of his career. I don't think anyone thinks that he is dwindling or descending. Look at what he's doing this year, 2.69 ERA. That's better than his career average, right? So he's ahead of all of those marks. His only two big injuries have been freak accidents with the line drive and the motorcycle. So there's nothing to say that he's injury prone unless he just, rides motorcycles and pitches and gets hit with line drives, which happens.
Rides motorcycles with Whit Merrifield, yeah.
There you go. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you could get a shit ton from Madison Bumgarner. You really, really could. But is it worth it because he's the centerpiece of your starting rotation, barring major injury or Tommy John or anything like that, for at least the next 5 years? So to me, it's no. It is. I don't see that decline. I don't see the Bill Walsh analysis of a Joe Montana or a Jerry Rice or a Roger Craig where you trade them away when they're still kind of in their prime but descending from their prime. I don't think he is. So I say no to a Madison Bumgarner. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's almost ridiculous to consider because I think the problem is the last two world champions, the Astros and the Cubs, both blew everything up before they won titles. And so now it seems like fans are clamoring for the Giants to do the same kind of thing. And there's a big difference. And I had a whole discussion, again, on Twitter, I believe it was last night, with Brooks Knudsen. I think it's Knudsen. We were talking, there's a big difference between a fire sale and a rebuild. Mm-hmm. A fire sale is stripping all your parts. A rebuild is just tinkering and putting the right guys in certain places. And the Giants have a rotation of Bumgarner, Rodriguez, Suarez. Their top three of the rotation is pretty darn good. Granted, Suarez has had some troubles, as the season's gone on now. But, I mean, you pull Bumgarner out of there, who's their ace? Dereck Rodriguez? And, I mean, I love Dereck. He is an absolute Rookie of the Year candidate. But that's a lot to put on a guy's shoulders who's only been pitching for 3 years.
That's the thing. I mean, you can't expect this guy. I mean, there's plenty of flashes in the pan. I'm not saying he is a flash in the pan, but he could be. So you can't rely on that. Bumgarner, is not a flash in the pan.
Right.
So you got to stick with the guy.
That's why I think that they are rebuilding on the fly. By calling up Duggar, by calling up Black, by giving Slater more at bats finally, because I feel like all Slater does is hit. Mm-hmm. Like, I was surprised to look and see that he's hitting over 300 because I've seen some grousing on social media that, oh no, Slater's just turning into another Bowker. The guy's hitting 304. Like, he's taken 16 walks and 99 plate appearances. That's pretty effing good.
Pretty good.
He's got an OPS plus of 120. I don't think there's anybody on the team. The only one higher on the team is Brandon Bell. So Slater has shown that he is capable of staying. And there's guys like that, like Slater, and you got to give Longoria time. He has picked it up since he's got back from injury. He's played really well since he came back from injury. So it means it took him a little bit to adjust to a new league, a new ballpark, and all those things. And there's no reason to just set the Giants on fire for the sake of setting them on fire.
Yeah.
After they're done with their payroll for this season and they stay under that luxury tax, they're free from luxury tax penalties. And from looking at the numbers, Hank Schulman was putting it out the other day, they're going to have like $40 million to work with this offseason. So it's not like they're going to be hamstrung like they were last season. And I'm waving the white flag. 2018 is done. They're in fourth place. They're what is it, 6.5 back?
Yeah.
6.5 back. I in 3 teams in front of them. I'm waving the white flag. We're going to see younger guys get some chances as this season goes on. There's another one. I want to say it was Garcia, the catcher. He got promoted to AAA recently over the weekend, and it wouldn't surprise me to see the Giants pull him up and give him a look during the month of September, because that'll be the time that the Giants can see what they have in-house and see what they have to go get. But there's not a lot of holes. I mean, we have a solid third baseman. There's a solid shortstop. There's a solid first baseman, solid backstop in Buster Posey, and he's still a solid backstop. You've got Duggar in center field. Slater could absolutely take over left field, and you got the possibility of Mac Williamson and Shaw coming up from the minors to try the other corner outfield position. So it's not like the Giants are the Marlins or the Reds, or even the Reds aren't that bad anymore. But the Mets. I'll use the Mets as an example. At least the Giants aren't the Mets. So there are pieces in place already. They just need those complementary pieces to come down, and it's just. You can only do so much with what you have.
So I just was interested here. It'll take me a minute here, but looking back at the Giants' past performance, instead of games played, I'm just looking at the date, August 9th, because that's today's date. The Giants in 2010, remember they had that epic fight down the stretch with the Padres. At this point on August 9th, they were 15 games above 500, 64-49, 1.5 games out. Let's check 2012. I'm looking at their playoff years, right? August 9th in 2012, they were in first place, 61-51, 10 games above 500, 1 game ahead of the Dodgers. Of course, they won the West by a ton that year.
They put their foot on the gas at the end of that season.
Oh yeah, that was one of the greatest seasons. I mean, for many reasons, not just the regular season finish, but of course the whole coming back 3 times or whatever against the Reds and the Cardinals. That was amazing. Let's see. August 9th of 2014, they were in second place 3 games out. Of course, they got the wild card. Wait, no. Yeah, this is 2014. They got the wild card. They were 63-55, 8 games above 500, 3 games out. They don't have the wild card standings here. I'd have to click on that. Let's see here. Wild card, they were in the second wild card position at the time with the Pirates, which, of course, whom they eventually played in 2014. And then 2016, on August 9th.
God, they had to have been right there.
They were 4 games clear in the wild card of the Miami Marlins for the second place, tied with the Dodgers at 64-49. So what is that? 15 games
15
above 500?
over, yeah, because they had the best record in baseball at the All-Star break.
Yeah, 16. Exactly, because they had that horrible second half collapse. And, of course, they were tied with the Dodgers for the NL West lead at the time, 9 games clear of the Rockies at the time. So when you look at the history of the Giants and their playoff performances in 10, 12, 14, and 16, they have never been in this position. So this is why I'm saying they're done. I mean, you are saying that too.
Well, this is not the 1951 Giants. They're not going to be 13 games back of the Dodgers on August 11th and then suddenly tear off a 37-7 streak. This team's just not going to do that. And now, even that team in 1951 was 8 games over 500 when they had to do that.
Right. Now, of course, the Giants, they finished the 2010 season 22 games over 500 at 92-70, which was incredible. And the Giants probably aren't doing that now, but I do remember, I'm backing up on the dates here, weren't they like 5 games back with 10 games to play or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. No, they weren't. I'm looking. I was wrong. Anyway, point being, the Giants just aren't in a position to do anything unless they win on some stupid 20-game winning streak. It's just not going to happen. So I do believe, like you said, they are in rebuilding mode. They don't want to admit it, and they won't admit it till the end of the season when they go into the offseason. But this is where they are, and I think they certainly are going to finish better than last year. There's no doubt about that. I think there's a good chance they could finish above 500, but I mean, they're probably going to finish around 79, 80, 81, 82 wins. That's it. That's where these guys are. They're going to be golfing in the season.
Yeah, you wrote the stat down here. Their playoff percentage is 2.2%.
Yep, that's where they put it. It's funny because you look at the playoff percentages, which are tracked by MLB, and even when the Dodgers were 2 games behind the Diamondbacks at one point, their playoff percentage was still higher than the Diamondbacks. So there's clearly some algorithm in there that's not just taking into account present standings. It's taking into account strength of team, strength of schedule, those kinds of things. And so those are kind of in there. The Dodgers have kind of been the number one team almost the entire season, except for a blip when you look at the little graph that they have. And, of course, the Dodgers have actually been leading the NL West very few days this entire season when you add it up. But overall, the algorithm points to the Dodgers winning the West, which would be their 6th in a row, which is not a surprise. Arizona may sneak in as a wild card. We'll see. The Giants probably don't have too much of a chance. They slated as 2.2%. So unless they peel off, 10 in a row, that's probably not changing too much. The other thing that we need to talk about here as we wrap up the episode is injuries. We've kind of ignored the elephants in the room, but Johnny Cueto. My God, the guy started the season just brilliantly, 3-0 with a 0.84 ERA. We thought he was the next coming of Cy Young, and he hit the shelf, came back, hit the shelf, came back, hit the shelf, came back, and he clearly was not the pitcher he was before. There was something going on with his elbow. They thought, oh, Tommy John, nope. Tommy John, nope. Tommy John, yes. That is the final prognosis now. He had it last week, and that was just a gut punch. I think you and I knew it was coming. I think most Giants fans knew it was coming. And to me, it's unfortunate it took so long to realize that because, they were looking at this 3 months ago. And if it had happened back then, well, you have 3 extra months of healing, right? You'd be 3 months ahead of the game. But unfortunately, most Tommy John pitchers come back in 12 to 15 months. So even if it was a year, you're talking about, okay, he's going to be available the last 6 weeks of the year next year. Good luck.
Well, he's talking about trying to do it.
I know.
I read a really good article that Bags wrote on The Athletic where he contacted Bronson Arroyo, Tim Hudson, and John Smoltz about what it's like to be over the age of 30 and get Tommy John. And Huddy apparently came back in the September of the next year, and it got him a good contract. His last contract with the Braves, it got him a couple years on, couple-year contract because he pitched decently. I was frustrated with the way they handled it, but now reading back, apparently it was only a partial tear when they first, did the diagnosis at the beginning of May.
Right.
And when he came off the mound after that Brewers game where he obviously had nothing, it's fully and completely torn now. The doctor told him that after surgery. So we know Cueto is the type of guy that it's been well documented in the offseason. He doesn't do much but ride his horses and feed his chickens. But apparently he's going to have to work his butt off. And I have a feeling he's going to try to get back by September of next year. Whether or not it matters, who knows? If the Giants are in a pennant race and Cueto comes back and he's, 2/3 of the pitcher he was, that's still a boost to the rotation. Mm-hmm. But it's frustrating because, like you said, we all kind of saw it coming. And you have to wonder why they didn't just do it in the first place. But, I mean, it's really easy for us to talk about surgery on somebody else's body. And because surgery is not something to be taken lightly.
No, and it's admirable that he tried, to be honest. So, I mean, it's not like he was trying to screw the Giants. The Giants, obviously were hoping that he could work through this, and they weren't trying to set his timetable back. And he started the season so well this year. I mean, it really was so promising. It was just, it's a gut punch because he was on track to having just a fantastic season. And unfortunately, he may not come back until late next year. And if not till 2020. And they got to pay him all that money next year, no matter what. which is so weird about baseball contracts, by the way. But that's another story for another podcast. But yeah, he's out, and along with that, for the rest of the season, Pablo Sandoval. I was actually at the airport in SFO when I was watching him score on that sacrifice fly from third base, and he pulled up lame, grabbing his hamstring. And at the time, I thought, oh, he pulled his hamstring. Oh crap, he's going to be out a couple weeks. No. It was a significant tear, and he requires surgery, so he is out for the rest of the year. And we talked about him last episode and certainly throughout the season, but he has, he's not the old Panda, the Panda of old, but he is way more serviceable than the Panda from Boston, and he's been fantastic this year, very comparable to Longo, and a more than adequate fill-in for all these other positions, including first base and third base, second base for a game. He pitched an inning. I mean, he's been the old Panda to a certain extent, and he's been fun to watch, and he's definitely been reinvigorated, rejoining the San Francisco Giants. And to me, it's just a shame because not only it's fun to watch him play, even in his portly shape, but the fact is he was really helping this team, and the Giants are going to miss him down the stretch.
Yeah, that was a bigger gut punch to me than the Cueto. The Cueto was kind of like you kind of expected it to happen. And I have a feeling Pablo will win the Willie Mack Award this season, even being injured for the final 2 months.
Could be, yeah.
He was a heartbeat in that clubhouse that kept the other heartbeats going. And it may be no coincidence that since he's gone out, let's see, the Giants have gone 5-7 since we last recorded. So they've gone 4 and 4 since he's been out completely. And it just sucks. That's just one of those that sucks. There's neither here nor there how much he helps the team. It just sucks because he won his way back into the hearts of Giants fans, and that's not easy to do.
No, it's not.
And the play, it seemed innocuous. I mean, the guy hit a triple, and he didn't hurt it on the triple. He hurt it on the slide.
That's what's so crazy. He didn't hurt it on the triple. He just hit a triple. It was his first triple since 2014 or 15. I guess 15 with Boston. And so that's the first one in 3 years. He was fine. And then he scores on a sac fly and ends up ripping it there. It was just like, yeah, you got to be kidding me, man. He hit, the guy hits a single or gets an out, and he doesn't rip his hamstring, and he's still playing. But that's the nature of sports and life. It's just certain, perfect place, perfect time. It just sucks.
He was such a guy that everybody knew he had their back. So, yeah. It's frustrating because especially like Brandon Belt's been out. So, he was a guy filling in. Now that Longo came back, he switched to the other side of the diamond. But I'm going to miss him just for the fun of it.
Yeah, me too.
Because when you get to a 500 season like this, you just look for the good stories the rest of the season. And he was one of them. Who knows with the other ones. Now we turn our eyes to like Duggar and Black and those kind of guys.
And remind me, sorry Giants fans if I'm embarrassing myself. They just signed him to a 1-year deal, correct?
I believe so, and I'm pretty sure he'll be back.
I think he'll be back because he realizes going anywhere else is not a good idea for the player he is. Whether it's psychological or not, I do think he's going to be back, but he certainly isn't going to be back for the major league minimum because that's what the trade was for. So, I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what happens in the offseason, but I certainly do think the Giants need to consider signing him even for a few million next year. We'll see what the market commands for him, given his history of trying to leave. So Belt is still out for another week or so. This guy just, again, you've pointed it out, he is just so good when he plays. He's streaky. We all know this. He's very, very streaky. But overall, he's just a solid force in the Giants lineup. And just every year, something happens to this guy. He just seems like the bad luck injury man, I mean, nothing as bad as Tommy John or anything like that. But with concussions and getting hit by pitches and everything else, it just seems like he just can't stay in the game. He certainly is the antithesis of Cal Ripken. He's just never going to be the next Iron Man.
Well, I mean, this was shaping up to be one of his better years, and then he had the appendicitis, and it took him a little bit to get going after that, and then now the hamstring tweak just totally derailed what was turning into his best season. He still leads the team in home runs with 14. And we were talking about it. Yeah, they haven't had like a 20 home run hitter in a couple years, I believe. And I thought he was going to be the one, but he's going to have to step it up over the last 2 months if he wants to hit those.
He was on pace for like 35 at the beginning of the year. And he's not going to cross 20, it looks like, unless he goes on some crazy streak. Shark is out indefinitely with his shoulder issue, and I don't know. This seems like a phantom thing. Yeah, this just seems like the Giants brass just going, yeah, we don't want to see you giving up 5 home runs in your next start, so we're going to just put you out indefinitely. God, they're paying this guy so much money again, and it's
only year 3.
I know. He's got a couple years left. It's just it hurts so much, and at least the one thing you could say is he 8 innings, right? And he had 1 good start out of 3. You can't even say that now. So, I don't know what's going to happen with him next year. We'll see if this shoulder thing is something that nags him the rest of his career. But this is going to be another albatross of a contract the Giants probably have to pay, and it just kills us, man. It just kills us. But it is what it is. He's not doing it on purpose. It's just bad luck in the way the Giants signings have gone in some years past. And of course, Hunter Strickland might be coming back around August 19th, so in about 10 days. He had a surgery on his hands, 5-6 weeks ago. So hopefully he'll be rejoining the team. I'm not saying that he's going to be better than Will Smith, but he certainly will be a boost to the bullpen no matter what people say about him. I don't think he's the best person in the world, but he certainly is a very good, above-average, serviceable pitcher. So
yeah, he seems to be healthy. He's starting to do some rehab games, but since he was moved to the 60-day disabled list, he's not eligible to come off until that August 18th date, I think it is.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. I think they'd have him up maybe this weekend if he was healthy. I mean, because he seems to be healthy. And that's another thing. That's back end of the bullpen that he had been doing pretty phenomenally. I mean, the guy only gave up 10 earned runs in 31. So what is that? 2.84 ERA this season. Yeah. He was shutting the door, and the Giants missed that on the back end. And again, it's tough to hold on to 1-run leads every damn game.
I'll say so. One of the final things we can talk about, I think we're going to skip who's hot, who's not, because we know that the Giants, their offense sucks right now. They've blown a lot of saves. I will give an honorable mention to Dereck Rodriguez. I mean, I'm not even going to look at his last 10 games, 6 games, 4 games, whatever. His freaking season ERA is down to 2.34 as a rookie. I mean, what the hell? I mean, the guy is just money this year. I mean, I know he's going to have his ups and downs eventually, and the league always seems to recorrect these rookies who come out so strong like him. Clearly, he's not going to hold this and sustain this for the next year or two. But the fact of the matter is, he has just been outperforming his projections, and thankfully for him, the Giants probably would be like completely out of the race. I know we know they're out of the race right now, but I mean, they might be 10 games back without Dereck Rodriguez at this point. So definitely gets my vote for who's hot right now. He's just been incredible.
Yeah, there's not enough good things we could say about Dereck Rodriguez.
So on Saturday at 5 o'clock, they are going to retire Barry Bonds, number 25.
Woo!
This is one of those things that we knew always should have been done. He should be in the Hall of Fame. And look, everyone who's typing us an email right now saying they hate Bonds for his steroid use and all that. Hey, look, I'm the first one to concur that he was a steroid user. He cheated the game. Many other players did too. Some of whom are in the Hall of Fame and have been voted into the Hall of Fame recently. I'm not going to go through a list of names that I believe are guilty, but the fact of the matter is there's a very large gray area here. And so for those who get on their high horse, especially those writers who vote for certain people and don't vote for certain people, I can't stand them. I really can't. I just think that it's a very hard line to draw. And I think that, guys like Jeff Bagwell and others who have been voted in recently, there's a lot of evidence that suggests they were steroid users, but it's up to the writer to believe it or not and to vote or not. And to me, the votes that I've seen over the last 5 to 10 years, they just infuriate me because of the flip-flopping and the yes but no and but yes but no. It's hard for me to fathom, but the fact of the matter is Barry Bonds, even pre-steroids and the way he was before we assumed he started taking steroids, was a Hall of Famer, and they're going to finally retire his number. And I think the Giants have been kind of treating this with, a 10-foot pole, clearly, since he retired and, didn't retire. He last played in 2007. He clearly could have played another 2 years or more, but no one would sign him. They're finally going to do it. And hopefully it's not just like a little plaque on the wall like it was for the 756 in center field.
Yeah, we had this past weekend, not this past weekend, the Milwaukee weekend. They put Kane, Vogie, and Wilson up on the Wall of Fame. And those guys got on the Wall of Fame before Barry Bonds, who retired, quote unquote, years before they started this run of World Series championships. His number hadn't even been retired. It's time. Nobody has worn 25, and I don't think it's necessarily because Murph was holding it back. I just don't think anybody wanted to step in those shoes.
Yeah, no one wanted to cause the controversy. Yeah,
right. I love Barry Bonds. I will always love Barry Bonds. I'm unabashedly a fan of Barry Bonds. Like, I've just changed my Twitter handle to Bonds for Hall of Fame. I love Barry Bonds so much. And I'm so happy to see this. I can't wait to find the Giants said they will share. If you are maybe one of our overseas listeners or like me, not in the Giants market, the Twitter account and the Facebook page will be sharing links so that we can stream the ceremony on Saturday at 5 Pacific. For me, it's 8 o'clock at night. And I can't wait. I'm setting my whole Saturday around watching this. Barry Bonds, I put in the notes, and we don't have to go too deep real quick, but my favorite Barry Bonds moment was watching him hit his 50th home run in 2001. And that's because that was the one I could see, because I was living in Chicago and it was at Wrigley. And I know everybody's got their favorites. It was 16 years ago today that he hit number 600 off of Kip Wells of the Pittsburgh Pirates. It was just a couple days ago that he hit 756 off Mike Bassick. So there's just the Giants' history is littered with Bonds moments. And, I'm at a point where I don't give about all that other stuff. He is the best left-handed hitter of my lifetime. And not only does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, he deserves his number retired. He deserves a statue. And I get that the ballpark is on 24 Willie Mays Way, but that's the ballpark that Barry Bonds built. And, again, this is an unabashed Willie Mays fan. That's the ballpark Bonds built. And so he deserves a statue as well. He deserves all the recognition that he gets. Mm-hmm. And I was looking through it, and it was funny. Just one little quick stat. In Barry Bonds' career, he hit 20 leadoff home runs. 20 leadoff home runs, which is weird because he never really led off, especially when he came to the Giants. He had 10 walk-off home runs. And believe it or not, the guy had 3 inside-the-park home runs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when he was fast.
Two of them in 97. I think 97 was his 40-40 year. He had 2 of them that year, one of them against Tom Glavine. I mean, this is a guy that he raised himself to be the best. There are 5 pitchers that he hit 8 home runs off of, the most in his career. Those pitchers' names are John Smoltz, Greg Maddux, Kurt Schilling, and then Chan-Ho Park and Terry Mulholland. But all names that any average fan would know.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of those things. He's got the walk record, which will never be touched. The intentional walk record, which will never be touched.
No.
It's just the guy is one of the greatest players in the history of baseball.
7-time All-Star, the whole thing. I mean, I grew up in the Bay Area. I'm 44 years old, so I've been going to the Giants games since the late 70s. Really became a fan, of course, in the 80s with Will Clark and others. And I didn't go to a ton of Giants games, but certainly in the early 2000s and the late 90s in Candlestick, I was going to more when I had, when I was an adult and had disposable income and all that. And I was there for some pretty dramatic moments, in Bonds' career. I was there for 660 when he tied Willie Mays. I was there for 700, and I was there for number 73 against the Dodgers when he hit it off the knuckleballer. In what was that, 2001, when he hit 73 home runs. I mean, I've been there for so many of these, including, all the ones where they, spray the streamers out and the whole thing. And, stop the game and have a mid-game ceremony, and he thanks the players and the coaches and the fans, and it's like, dude, it's the 7th inning. Let's get the game going on, right? And the other players are like, what the F, man? It was a different time, man. You don't see that today, even with the guys like Albert Pujols and Mike Trout and others, breaking all these records. They don't stop games in the middle of a game, but that's what happens when you have someone like that's Bonzian. I mean, they keep calling it Bonzian, and it's true. He transcends the game in so many, realms. I get it. He did steroids, and it's hard to say how many home runs I think he would have hit without steroids, because if he didn't have steroids, or if at least there wasn't the aura of steroids around him, he would have played at least another 2-3 years. So my argument is like, well, maybe he wouldn't have hit 756 in his, second to last year, but maybe he would have hit 756 2 years later. I don't know. We don't know the answer to that question. But he was vilified and ostracized from the game for what he did. And to be honest, I think some of it is absolutely deserved. But at the same time, we know so many players are doing steroids, including pitchers, which we know. Roger Clemens, by the way, I have this great shot from 2000, I think it's 6 or 7, when the Yankees visited AT&T Park, and I brought my telephoto lens, and I'll post it on TortureCast. I have these great shots of Roger Clemens pitching against Barry Bonds, my own photos, and they're fantastic. It's so fun to look at these old photos, which I didn't think were very, very, significant at the time, let's say. I thought it was, this is cool. It's Roger Clemens versus Barry Bonds. But like, now you look back at it and go, wow, it's two guys that are, potential Hall of Famers that are being, held out. But my God, what a player he was.
Yeah. So I'm so hyped for the retirement ceremony. It was a long time coming. I love Barry Bonds, like I said, unabashedly, and I will forever. The guy, he was the perfect guy at the right time for the Giants. I mean, 1993, they won 103 games, still didn't make the playoffs, but it was one of their greatest seasons ever. And it doesn't happen if Bonds doesn't join the club.
I agree. I actually have that newspaper still in my collection. In 1993, when they well, I guess it was a fall of 1992, right? When they signed him. I have that that paper. So, pretty important moment in Giants history. All right, well, coming up, the Giants are hosting the Pittsburgh Pirates for 4 games this weekend, starting tonight. And looks like we're going to be recording next Monday. So we're going to wrap up this 4-game series. And, of course, if the Giants somehow do something insane like sweep the Pirates and the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks tank it over the weekend and the Giants are suddenly, 4 games, 3 games out, we'll talk about it then. We'll think about maybe their playoff chances are a little bit better. But given the fact that, they may split with the Pirates and, if they're 7-8 games back by Monday, we're going to be talking a little bit more about rebuilding. So
Yep. And we'll get to revisit the Barry Bonds retirement ceremony and, share our favorite moments from that.
Yeah, part of me wants to see if I can go to that game. We'll see what my wife says about Saturday evening. But maybe I'll try to get some passes for that. We'll see what happens there. Stay tuned on Twitter. We'll see. All right, so that'll do it for episode 149 of the TortureCast. You can follow us collectively at TortureCast. You can also like us on Facebook. We do appreciate the likes down there. You can follow us individually at ChadK21 for myself and at 2OutHits for Eric. That's with the number 2. Check us out on torturecast.com, where we post all of our episodes and other ancillary things. Eric, what else is going on in your world that you want to pimp?
No, nothing. I got nothing. It is nothing. Literally, people, if I could explain to you how hot it is and how I can barely think, that's kind of how it's been for the last couple months. And honestly, when the Giants aren't playing well, there's no motivation to do anything. So you're going to get my best here on the podcast, and that's where I'm going to bring it.
All right, that's good. All right, guys. Well, until Monday, this has been episode 149. We'll look forward to talking to you then. For Eric, this is Chad signing off, and we will see you next time. A-boom.
A big thank you to everybody for listening to the TortureCast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Follow us on Twitter at TortureCast. You can also like us on Facebook or check out our blog at torturecast.com. I also want to say thank you to Ashcon and Bailey for letting us use their song Feeling Like a Giant for our intro. For Ben Lee and Chad King, my name is Willie Dills saying, we'll see you next time.